Over to Nigel. Good afternoon, everyone. It's the afternoon session. I often find myself at the afternoon sessions, which I like, to give you a license to be a little more animated. Because we've all had lunch, we've all sat through some very interesting sessions today. The energy levels might be flagging a bit, so I'll try and be as conversational as I can and move through the information field. So the title of this presentation is the CRC Contribution to Research Training, the first part of this presentation. Both presentations in this session will be about this thing we know quite well in Australia called the Cooperative Research Centre. My presentation really is giving you an overview very quickly of a scoping study that I conducted for the Cooperative Research Centres Association. I commissioned the scoping study really because the nature of the CRC contribution to research training was unclear. They were interested in learning about how they could demonstrate really the value in what they were doing and potentially compare the outcomes of their research training activities against those of universities. The study highlighted challenges in collecting and reporting information, challenges that everybody faces, and some quality assurance challenges as well. So broadly, those are the bases I'll hit in about 2 minutes. So, CRC program, what is this? It's a government program that was established by the Australian government in 1991 to support a framework for a long-term investment in research collaboration with industry built around a user-driven model. The program basically supports bids through an assessment framework where researchers and industry partners will come together, put a proposal to the Australian government, and if they're lucky, get funding for, in research terms, it's a long period of time, 5 to 7 years in many cases, 10 years often. In the world of short-term funding, right, that is a long-term period. So in Australia, CRCs now really do set the benchmark for research cooperation, certainly when it comes to cooperation with industry, but for many people, they set the benchmark for research cooperation. Research cooperation per se. We have 50 CRCs at the moment in Australia, roughly, engaged with around 400 partner organisations. So certainly, in terms of engaging a broad range of stakeholders around applied problems in research, they are very important. But this event is not about research collaboration and cooperation in general, it's about research training. CRCs are active in the research training space. In fact, it's a requirement for them when they put their proposal into the Australian government to get funding, they must have some kind of plan for doctoral education. As part of that plan, they must engage at least one university as a research partner to facilitate the, if nothing else, the candidature arrangements for the students. So when I refer here to a CRC doctoral student, they're still technically a student of the partner university because, of course, the CRC is not an education provider, which doesn't confer the degree. But as we'll see, they're quite active otherwise in supporting research training. The scoping study that I undertook had some general problems that they were looking to solve. A lot of them were around metrics, how they can demonstrate that they're doing well. The CRC people really do believe they did well, and I believe they did as well, but they really didn't have the evidence to support it in the same way that universities were demonstrating performance. So to date, largely the success of the doctoral training is the graduate, and from a program level point of view, the graduate is considered one of the positive outcomes of the program. So there are research outputs, there are papers generated, and there are research graduates generated as well, and these are all considered to be positive question was really, what is the CRC contribution to research training? And my colleague and I were just in a session around doctoral training centres where we learned a lot about ETCs and new acronym for me. And it was interesting that there are some issues in common here. In the CRC case, posed with this question, really what the CRC contribution to research training depends on who you ask. If you ask the universities, they're a partner in this doctoral training in each individual case, and the students enrolled with them. From their point of view, they manage the candidate's enrolment, they assign a supervisor or a supervisory panel as they would any other student. So from their perspective, the CRC contribution is often kind of peripheral. They go off, they spend some time in a lab somewhere doing some research that they're not entirely sure about, but they're still on the university's books as a candidate of that institution. If you ask the CRCs though, they will say, well, they're our students. They're based in our labs, they use our equipment, they engage with our colleagues, both within the CRC and out with industry, with the industries with which we're engaged. So they're very much a CRC student, and we would often view the university's role is basically administrative form. They sign the forms, they manage the candidature, and they confer the degree at the end. And I think the answer to the question really depends on the individual student, and I'm sure you often find this is the case with doctoral training students. You provide all these resources and opportunities for candidates. At the end of the day, they'll typically seek out the resources and support that best suit them and the needs of their project. That's very much the case with the CRC contribution to research training. That doesn't help in terms of evidence, though. So the brief of the scoping study was to examine the definition and measurement of the CRC contribution, in particular looking at metrics where they could demonstrate value and distinctiveness in their contribution, identify dimensions and criteria for their activities that would make in the contribution, and some opportunities for future development. A quick overview of findings. What we did confirm was that research education is central and remains central to CRC program activities. But considered as a group, altogether they are the 12th largest provider of research training in Australia by student load. They're the 9th largest provider in Australia in terms of overall doctoral completions in the system. They rank 8th nationally in terms of their efficiency, shall we say, in supporting completions. And compared with university groups, they rank 2nd in terms of broadly called here completion rates. 2nd behind the group of universities we refer to as the group of 8, which are comparable, I believe, to your Russell group of universities. So a brief review of the metrics and how this all panned out. Enrolment metrics typically, whether we like it or not, form the basis for measures for performance and effectiveness in research training. Those are made up of enrolments, completions and student load, and there are various combinations and equations you can derive based on those primary metrics. So here's some numbers. This summary is the 15 largest university providers by student load. So that is full-time equivalent enrolment data. Here we have the big guns, Sydney, Melbourne, Queensland, Monash, very large research doctoral enrolment, smaller research master's enrolment. There's your total research degree below there in full-time equivalent. We can see our CRCs here, considered roughly 50 of them, would rank 12 if we counted them as an individual provider. So they support a substantial proportion of the Australian research training capacity. Here is a summary of just raw completion numbers. So this is the total number of completions coming into the system, or coming out of the system, should I say, as graduates. Again, this is 2010, again the big guns churning out 500 This is where you normally see a slide on completion rates, a quick meditation on completion rate. I'm not quite sure what the standard calculation for completion rate would be here in the UK, but in Australia we follow the government guidelines, and that is the proportion of students who commence a course in Year X neither complete nor in X plus 1. So completion and attrition are two sides of the same equation, right? And you need this information to be able to get that equation to work. Universities record this information, but unfortunately for the purposes of my study, CRCs don't. When I was wondering how I was going to get around this problem, I realised that I didn't really like the official measures of attrition anyway. They're confounded by lots of things, including the variable enrolment status typical of research high degrees, longer completion times, greater mobility than their undergraduate colleagues. Lots of things make that equation not really reliable. It's a less than perfect measure. So I, using the information available, came up with a proxy. It's what I call a completion ratio. I used a moving average to try and smooth out year-on-year variation, and this is what I came up with. Good news for the CRC program, they ranked second behind the group of 8 universities on all of the variations of the completion rate metric that I used. The full reports here in the report, the full data you can look at in the report. But just a quick summary, here are the university groupings that we refer to in Australia for our providers. Group of 8 is comparable to the Russell group. IRU, I understand, is comparable to the Red group, types of universities, etc. And we have very similar reflections on these metrics for each of these groups, ranging from 68% as a completion ratio or completion rate, down to 42%. And I'm sure there will be some providers in that group that maybe are below that, but I haven't listed them here. Here is a summary of some individual providers. Similar to what we saw before in terms of scale, the big guns seem to have better completion rates. CRC program are doing very well here. A notable entry though is a Red Brick University, and I should disclose that I'm an alumnus of that institution. Flinders University punching above its weight here at 66%. Again, the point here is CRC programs in Australia, while yes, they are partly with many of these universities who are piggybacking on the capacity of well-established institutions, but something is going on for them to consistently be scoring so well on all the available measures. I won't go on about my ratios, but feel free to use them. They're easy to calculate, and in my view, they're a more reliable measure than the standard measures of attrition. So try them out. Here's a nice graph. Again, with our university groups, and this might be very good news for the CRCs because you can see a trend. And looking back at the policy discussion around CRC's activity in research training, there was more attention paid in the early 2000s, in particular to supporting the cohort experience for doctoral candidates who are engaged with CRCs, and also to some generic skills training as part of that. So getting students together in a cohort to do generic skills development wasn't directly part of their direction. So further research is needed to see what is going on here to get this improvement. But either way, the last few years they're beating our colleagues in the Russell Group equivalent universities. That could be very good news for the CRCs. At risk of
can I hurry you along?
Yes, I'll conclude. Thank you. I've got away from this slide, as usual. There's more to this than enrolment metrics. This is the feedback we got from the stakeholders on what's good about CRC research training. Most of it is to do with engagement with industry. But the problem the CRCs had was that they didn't have a standardised framework for monitoring or evaluating their performance. So while they're doing all this good stuff, they're not terribly good at measuring and reporting it. Future development then for them would be to use frameworks like this, colleagues, Joe Luker and Trish Wolski, are developing a good practice framework where providers like CRCs can take a template, use the indicators that come with the framework, and use it to demonstrate all the good stuff they're doing. And finally, for them, some practical steps. Using an internal appraisal tool to try and work towards developing a program-wide data strategy, program-wide governance and good practice frameworks to help them benchmark both within the program and against universities, and potentially threshold indicators of performance if they want to use them. I haven't put standards in bold because I think if you're doing all that, you don't really need standards. That would be a controversial point in another presentation. Most of the study was focused around inputs, processes and outcomes. There was a lot of interest in outcomes in the course of the study, about which I could say almost nothing because there was no evidence. But luckily for me, my colleague, an expert in this area, so I'll hand over to him.
Thank you, Nigel, and thank you for giving me some time to talk. Mainly for today. As Nigel's indicated, there's very little information collected by the CRCs on sort of who the students are and time to completion, those sorts of things. And I was involved in a study that started looking around probably 2006, 2007 at cooperative research center graduates and who they were. And at that point, there wasn't a central list of who these candidates and graduates were. We didn't have any demographic information about them to know if they were different to the general PhD population. So we had to find them, and that involved me going through pretty much all the annual reports for every single CRC from one year to the next and compiling lists of names. Once we found these graduates, we were looking basically at people who'd gotten their PhD 5 to 12 years previously. We sent them an online survey to find out if the rhetoric of the CRC program around its ability to create industry-ready graduates was actually resulting in some differences. We also sent a survey to some to PhD graduates from some of the group of 8 universities, so 3 of the big research-intensive universities, from similar disciplines, with the logic that these universities might have the resources and the things in place to be providing similar levels of additional educational opportunities. And then, as Margaret outlined this morning, we also sent a survey to employers of PhD graduates, and I'll touch briefly on that at the end. It was quite difficult identifying these graduates. Once we did, though, we sent them the survey and we found some very interesting things. First up, we got about 327 responses from CRC graduates, and that was all 2,150 graduates that we found names for, and of those we found contact details for about 60%. So 327 graduates we're fairly happy with in the end. And we've got similar levels of response rates from the other group of PhD graduates, the non-CRC graduates. We found that there were some significant differences. There were, as you can see here, 47% of non-CRC graduates were female compared to only 35% in the CRC group. And that was a significant difference. There was also a significant difference in terms of where they were actually working at the time of the survey, which could have been up to 12 years post-PhD. So 58% of the non-CRC group were working outside academia, compared to 41% of the CRC group who were working in academia. Levels were fairly similar in terms of those who were in continuing or tenured positions at the time of the survey. And the chart, the pie graphs down the bottom, purple is the university, so it just sort of shows you the difference between where people were located at the time. One of the things we asked was why people had started a PhD. I think we tend to forget that people come into it with all sorts of varying reasons. And what they're looking to get out of the doctorate is very different. You can see here above the first line in red are the things that were agreed to as being important or very important by 3/4 or more of graduates. And you can see that those are all mainly personal, intrinsic reasons. But you can also see in the blue section down next that things like to improve career prospects was still rated as important or very important by 70% of people in each group. So people are coming into it with an idea that the PhD is going to improve their career prospects, even if their main reason for wanting to do one might be intrinsic. So some of the other things we found were that only 43% of the non-CRC group reported having any additional or top-up funding throughout their candidature, compared with 73% of CRC graduates, which is quite a difference. And this also resulted in fewer CRC graduates reporting that they've been engaged in employment during their PhD. So that has implications as well. In terms of disciplinarity, around similar levels of all the graduates, regardless of group, said that their PhD project had been based in one discipline or sub-discipline. But 53% of CRC graduates said their supervisory team had been interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary, compared with only 39% of non-CRC graduates. So they were getting a different experience there as well. We assume that those in the CRC program may have different training options than those in traditional university settings, so we asked them a whole range of activities. To what extent did you attend these things when you were a graduate class student? And there were significant differences on about half of the things, and they included that CRC graduates attended and presented at more conferences, participated in more professional development and research skills programs, attended more business or industry meetings, and interacted with professionals outside academia to a greater extent. In contrast, those who had been in a school setting hadn't had the CRC involvement undertook greater teaching. So we were surprised with there only being differences on sort of half the things we asked about. We also conducted interviews with CRC education and training managers, and they outlined a whole stack of things that we hadn't actually thought about to include in the survey, such as CRCs generally have an annual conference every year, and they will fly the students in from the different hubs to wherever they're having a conference. They'll get to meet their peers, they'll get to present at a student conference, they may have mock interview situations, and we hadn't asked any of that in the survey. So this chart here is looking again at where people are employed. And we found that approximately half of the graduates in our sample, regardless of group, were employed outside the university sector. But the PhD still seems to be significantly more geared towards work in universities. For example, here you can see that 62% of university employed graduates, regardless of whether they're CRC or not, reported that the PhD process had helped them to a great extent to find a satisfying position, while only around 40% of private and public sector employees reported that. But when I broke these figures down somewhat, I looked just at the private sector. There was a difference in that CRC graduates reported that their PhD in a CRC had prepared them to a greater extent to work in the private sector than those who hadn't had the interdisciplinary and the industry experience. And although it doesn't have direct relevance to the CRCs, it was mentioned by Margaret this morning, and I find it interesting. We then did an employer survey, and I'm just presenting mainly university employers here, so heads of school, deans of faculty. We asked them a variety of things in terms of the recent PhD graduates that they employ in their organisations. Approximately 75% of responses we got were from universities, so that's why I'm focusing on those. And we asked them some open-ended questions, including why their organisation employs PhD graduates. And there were several themes that came through, the predominant one being to conduct research, but that was kind of, I've given you some of the quotes there as an idea of how I came to that conclusion, including one that just said research, to do research. Some of them elaborated in terms of working independently, research skills, but interspersed through that were also that it's a minimum qualification. Sometimes they just said we're a GOH, therefore we employ PhDs. There were a few that specifically said it is a minimum qualification to work here, to have a PhD, entry level. There were also a few that mentioned teaching, but not very many. and it usually came after research. So in the quotes where teaching was mentioned, research usually got mentioned first and then teaching as a bit of an afterthought. And some mentioned supervision of students and things like that as well. So it was interesting to note the conflicting standpoints of some employers. So, for example, person number 845, a professor and director, stated that they employ PhD graduates because they require people with a higher research degree and skill sets than one obtains with a PhD degree. Yet when asked if there are any particular characteristics of graduates that would lead you to reconsider or not hire them, they responded with a narrowly focused PhD with little industry contact and interaction, little knowledge of societal importance of research. One quote I particularly liked, and I always toss up the barrel to include is, my area of research and the area I manage is very technically demanding. I and my staff are noticing that a large number of new graduate students and PhDs are not technically capable. Some have no idea what a screwdriver is, except for a drink of vodka. So the open-ended responses suggest to me a conflict within the perceptions of employers, I'm talking university employers, that the PhD is simultaneously a minimum requirement, but it's also the be-all and end-all, but it's not enough. So this is what Margaret was mentioning this morning. So this is university employees only. I know you won't be able to read all of that, but the blue line is the level to which university employers said we expect this skill to a great extent in recent PhD graduates that we hire. The blue is the level to which they said they see it demonstrated to a great extent in PhDs that hire. So you've got things like effective written and communication skills, 81 versus 52. Initiative, further down, 76% said that they expect that to a great extent. 31% said they see that to a great extent. Alternatively, assertiveness, 9% said they expect that to a great extent, and 13% said they see that. So in Australia, there's a lot of discussion about needing to engage with industry employers more to find out what it is they want in graduates, but we're obviously not doing that great a job if as university employers, which this is, we're still having that discrepancy in what we actually expect of the people that we are training. We're creating their training courses, we're putting them through it, we've gone through it ourselves, we're graduating them saying, excellent, well done, you've got far enough along to graduate, but you're not quite up to being employed. And so given that half of our sample ends up in places outside academia, I think that we need to be looking at ways to open graduates' eyes to the opportunities outside. The CRC program to me seems to be one good way of doing that, in that graduates, to a great extent, were ending up outside academia, and I think that's because they have the ability to interact with people outside, and they get that snapshot of what you can actually do in terms of research outside of academia. And when we're looking at the assessment of doctoral programs, we need to consider what it is the individuals are actually after when they come into the programs as well. So thank you for your time, and I'd like to just acknowledge our collaborators on the project as well. Thank you.
Thank you to those two speakers. We have time for just a couple of questions. So I throw the floor open. One at the front here, microphone on its way.
Hello, I'm from the Open University, and some years ago I was involved in some project work which we looked at skills development for undergraduate students and what happened when they used those transferable skills but in a different context. And we found that for a while, until they adjusted to the context, their level of skill and being able to apply it actually declines. And I just wonder if we're seeing some of that in the data that you produced there, in that maybe the PhD students do develop these skills, but then when they transfer it to a different context, for a little while they go backwards. And so I just wondered when that data was collected and at which stage in their transition from the academic world into a different world that data might have been taken.
That's a good question. We asked employers to rate recent graduates employed in their organisation, and that was generally kind of within the last 12 months of graduating. So it was up to them to define recent, but it was still interesting, I thought, that they're sort of saying we expect someone who is new to be able to perform to this level, and they're not.
Okay, another one at the front there, and then we'll have one there, and then we'll move on.
If the following things are true, it may not be. If, in a sense, research and working in industry is a performing art, among other things, like singing, like being an artist, like being a dramatist, if there were some characteristics that had to do with being able to perform, then, you know, if you have a 10-year, even if you go to music school, you probably won't be very successful from an employer's point of view as a musician. If you can't draw, you may not be able to be a very good artist later. I wonder if the skills or the entrance requirements that we have for doctoral students are actually sensitive to what characteristics may be when you get out of school. Because, to say something unpopular, you can't train everything or develop everything. There are certain innate skills, and maybe we haven't put a good handle on those when we actually admit people to our doctoral programs. It's a question.
George, thank you so much for that question. I promised a really simple, straightforward question. I think it's really interesting. My take on what you're saying is it goes to student admissions and in a sense your philosophy of your admissions. And I think because universities are constrained to have, for good reasons, one admissions framework for one set of graduate outcomes, which to cover all the disciplines have to be very generic. If you compare that to CICs, we're getting a good sell today, CICs have their own selection criteria for their programs. So there are cases where students can gain admission to a university and apply to be part of the CIC program and be declined. Why? Because the CICs actually do what you're describing. They look to their desirable graduate outcomes, which, because they are discipline specific and industry specific, they have quite specific graduate outcomes that they can then look through their admission strategies to see what are the indicators of a good graduate in our particular discipline. And I think it's a strength for small scale provision of research training. I think it's one of the strengths that we can actually do.
Just a technical point really on the metrics. Is there any particular bias in terms of how CRC students distributed amongst the university sector? Because you're showing us metrics where CRC as a whole is performing second best in one category. But if they're all in the top universities, for instance, they're not doing as well as you might expect. That's the cynic in me saying we can do anything.
Yes, and you're right. And that's the next phase for me is to get my hands on the data which will allow me to compare the same information by discipline area. Because as we all know, completion rates vary by discipline area. In one discipline, they're characteristically quicker to complete, and they're typically more often full-time or whatever, right than the next. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to benchmark CRCs at universities by discipline area, but perhaps next year.
No, but in general, our CRCs, they tend to enrol students at the better, the red brick or the Russell type university. That's, I guess, what.
Yes, that'll be my third publication now, but if I can get my hands on that information. There is a bias towards the larger institutions, but it's not black and white.